Hi, I'm Sean Cruz. We're here today on Currents Up Close. I'm joined by Shirley Murner to talk about Medicare fraud, abuse, and errors. And I got involved in this program as I was preparing to retire from mayor last December. And I met Shirley on the way out of the building, and she said, when you get your things settled, I'd like to talk to you about Senior Medicare Patrol. It's a volunteer program that we are talking with Shirley Murner, who's the state director of that. And so Shirley, what is the problem we're looking at trying to resolve? And there's 5,000 volunteers nationwide working on this.
That's correct, John, there are. And I'm so glad to have this opportunity to meet with you and have you on board as a Senior Medicare Patrol volunteer. The Medicare and healthcare fraud is the fastest growing crime in the United States. It is an easy crime. It's very difficult to protect, and you need to know that billions and billions, as a matter of fact, $60 billion each year are lost to fraud, waste, and abuse within the taxpayers' system. This is money that should be spent on beneficiaries' health care, not lining the pockets of fraud.
So who does it affect then?
It affects absolutely everyone, all of the taxpayers across the nation. It affects everyone's health. It affects millions and millions of people. But most of all, it affects you and me and the Health Trust Fund of the United States. The future of Medicare, it also affects each one of our levels of care and quality of care.
So what is being done to correct this issue or problem?
Okay, the federal government back in 1997 started a few Medicare summary projects across the nation, and they were so successful that they've gone on, and we now have a Senior Medicare Patrol in every one of the states, Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. Across the nation, as you pointed out, there are over 5,000 volunteers. But in Iowa, we have 53 volunteers just like you. And since the beginning of the year, they have trained and educated over 1,700 people about healthcare scams. They've also referred 3 additional cases to law enforcement for future action.
Could you give a few examples nationwide of the cases that have happened, just like, for example, last week? What kind of scams are there?
I sure can. It's amazing, John. The Federal Trade Commission reported receiving 10 calls per day from people who were getting calls saying that someone from Medicare was calling them, stating that they were issuing new Medicare cards and that they needed to have their Medicare number in order to get their new card correct, because the new card will not have your Medicare number on it. Now, there are parts of this scam that are true. There are going to be new Medicare cards issued across the nation, but they're coming out in phases and they won't start until 2017. So if you're getting a call asking for this information now, it is a scam. Secondly, you need to remember Medicare will never call you. They already have that information.
So have there been any Iowa cases that have been solved due to the efforts of volunteers? Do you have an example of something that was resolved because of a volunteer?
I do, but first of all, I want to explain to us that Iowa is very, very fortunate. We have very honest and caring providers here in Iowa. However, that doesn't mean we are immune to fraud or scams. Actually, Iowa's a natural target for this because we're honest, we're trusting, we still believe in a handshake here in Iowa. Iowa is 5th in aging population across the United States. And the stereotype is that seniors or older people have more money. 17% of all Iowans are on Medicare. The total spending for Medicare in Iowa is $4.3 billion. And the OIG estimates that 10% of that spending in Iowa is lost to fraud. An average Iowan's Medicare benefit is $4,846. If we stopped fraud in Iowa, we could pay for the benefits of over 50,000 Iowans. Scams take place all over the place in Iowa. The most common one to affect seniors right now, John, is a scam that people are posing as IRS agents to collect personal information. And just last week, I had a call from the IRS, and I'd like to have you play that today if you could, so that people can actually hear what these scammers are doing and what they're doing to Iowans.
You have 2 old messages, Monday, 5:13 p.m.
is filed against your name. This is Officer Brianna Scott from the Department of United States Treasury. This call is official final notice from United States Treasury. The nature and purpose of this call is to inform you that we have received a legal petition notice concerning a tax fraud against you. Still before the matter goes to federal claims courthouse or before you get arrested, please call immediately on our hotline division number, that is 972280736. Make sure you call us as soon as possible.
Okay, there are some real helpful hints that I'd like to pass on to your viewers today. And the first one is IRS does not contact you by telephone. To avoid being put in an unfortunate position, consider caller ID. If you don't recognize the number, don't answer it. Once you're on the phone, it's really hard to say no to their requests. But remember, it's shrewd to be rude. If you answer that phone and they start asking you for personal information, hang up. There's a scam that's using a fictitious IRS form that's going around in Iowa right now, and it's to mislead people into disclosing their personal information, their banking information. The scam says that you get a letter, first of all, from the IRS stating that they are updating their records and they need to exempt you from reporting interest on your bank accounts on your next tax form. According to the letter, if you do not file the enclosed, and I'm going to repeat this a couple times, W9095 form, you will be subject to a 31% tax interest paid to you or them. The alleged form seeks your bank account number, your mother's maiden name, and your PIN numbers. Once they get this information, they deplete your bank account. What do you do if you receive one of those calls or letters? First of all, don't send it back. Do not give them that information. Secondly, if you really have filled out that form and sent it back, quickly go to the bank, close your accounts. Use a new password, but don't use your mother's maiden name. Get new PIN numbers. Connect the fraud unit of the credit bureau. Call your local police, and then contact the IRS, because these are really federal crimes. So these are two of the biggest things that have been happening across across Iowa right now. There have been, you asked me about cases, there have been several convictions in Iowa that all happened because someone knew what to do, and it's because of volunteers like you, John, that they knew what to do. In the northwest part of the state, an astute nurse called our number because she had had a physician there who had treated all 26 patients. He was brand new into the area, treated all 26 patients, diagnosed them with having the flu, told them to go home and take 2 aspirins and get plenty of rest. She thought something was a little strange there, so she called us. Long story short, we began an investigation through the Iowa Medicare Association, and this gentleman had not been a doctor, as he had stated on his application to Iowa. He had been a nurse's aide in Springfield, Missouri before moving to Iowa. In southern Iowa, 2 gentlemen were sitting at a senior center discussing their Medicare summary notice and their billing from their podiatrist, and they both were charged exactly the same amount. Sounds logical, except that one of them was an amputee. Couldn't have had 10 toes to be charged for. And in central Iowa, there was a daughter whose mother was in a nursing home, and They falsified information so that they could place the mother on Medicaid and get reduced charges and payments at the nursing home because she wouldn't have to be self-paid. She could go on Medicare. Well, the nursing home recognized the fact that the mother owned a 480-acre farm. She was not qualified to go on Medicaid. She was not qualified to use taxpayers' money for her support. In Waterloo, Iowa, we had a woman several years ago who got a flu shot, and the flu shot was billed to her for $9.19. Barbara called me and said, you know, I got a letter and I'm supposed to have a second flu shot, and it was okay because Medicare will pay for the second one. I wonder why they should pay for that when it wasn't their fault. I thought it was a really good question. Again, long story short, through a year and a half of investigation, it was found out that the pharmaceutical company that gave the false or the bad serum to the hospitals, directors, and across the country, there were 123,842 of those shots. Barbara Whitney asked one question, and she only questioned $9.19, but she put $1,250,000 back into Medicare. So what you're doing is so important. It's happening everywhere. John, there are 3 basic steps that we are out teaching everyone to do, and that's to protect their identity, detect any mistakes, and then to report them. Would you like to tell the audience how we go about doing that through our system?
Well, the first step, and you have a slide on the screen there, is protect yourself from Medicare fraud and abuse. 3 things you do, at least 3 things, is do treat your Medicare card and number like your credit card. Do watch out for identity theft, and do be aware that Medicare doesn't call or visit you to sell you anything. Don't give your card to anyone except a doctor or other medical provider, and don't carry your Medicare card unless you will need it. It's the same thing, you shouldn't be carrying your Social Security card. You probably know right now, and probably for the next 4 or 5 years, as she mentioned, they're going to be changing probably Medicare numbers, but right now it's your Social Security number with either an A or an AB or different letters to the back. But so you've got one card that has both your Social Security and your Medicare number. And so it can be used by bank fraud or health fraud just by losing that number. So help protect yourself.
And John, isn't it true that people won't be denied service at a hospital or in case of an emergency if they're not carrying that number with them, that they'll have time to get back?
Yeah. And I just entered the Medicare system this January, and I know that I went to the doctor and I didn't have the Part B on my card yet, but they treated me, and then I was able to then go back and verify that after the fact.
So it really isn't necessary to carry that card with you at all times.
Right. You do not want to lose that, because that becomes
exactly
part of a health fraud or a financial fraud. As you mentioned, banks can get those numbers. And so the second step, once you've tried to prevent, and you can't prevent everything, but is to detect Medicare fraud and abuse. Use your personal health journal, which is, we'll hold it up later, but it's a little document we pass out with all the presentations. Is on the screen now to the far right. And so it's just a handy way to keep track of your doctor calls, what happened, and your medication. So when you do get your Medicare summary notices, which you get every quarter if you have services rendered by a hospital or doctor, it will have what happened and what they were charged. And so if you can take your personal Medicare journal and compare, then you look at, and some of the things you'd like to look at as on the screen, services you didn't receive, double billing twice or more for the same service, or services not ordered by your doctor. So those are 3 examples of things you would look for on that document, and then anything else that does not look right to you. And then you can access on that screen, it says also your Medicare information at www.mymedicare.gov. And so we're going to show at this point a video about somebody coming to a door visit, which would not happen by Medicare or IRS.
Medicare doesn't go door to door,
Door.
do they, John?
No,
Oh, good afternoon. I'm Brad, and your doctor told me to come to your home and check your blood pressure.
Well, what a wonderful service. Is there any charge for that?
Oh, no, not at all.
Well, go right in.
Sure. If I could check your pulse? Well, everything seems normal.
Good.
Please fill out this paperwork to prove that I was here, and don't forget to include your Medicare number. And I'll be back next week and recheck your blood pressure for you.
Okay, well, thanks.
If you get caught in this Medicare scam, call Iowa Senior Medicare Patrol at 1-800-423-2449.
You know, John, seeing that video just reminds me of another way that Medicare, or people have been getting Medicare numbers, and this happened in Waterloo about Christmas time. Someone was standing outside of a senior housing unit offering $50 for their Medicare number. You know, $50 at Christmas, if you don't have enough money for your grandchildren's Christmas presents, is pretty tempting. And people don't realize if they sell their Medicare number, they've also sold their whole history of their life. If I am charging, if I've got your Medicare number and I go to the hospital and have to have a colonoscopy, or worse yet, a wheelchair, I get a wheelchair on your Medicare number, you're only allowed one wheelchair per life, and therefore when you need one, you might not. Or I might put something that's false, totally false on your record, and when you go in to use it, you'll be treated incorrectly. This could be life-threatening for people. So never sell your Medicare number, and always read that Medicare summary notice, because if I'm using it and it comes on your Medicare summary notice, it'll be services that were not rendered to you.
Okay. So in terms of the third step, first you're trying to prevent, then you're trying to detect, then a report. And here's some things. What we suggest is that first call the doctor or provider of the hospital to try to understand your bill, because there may be a typo error, and it's not all fraud, but there are some errors. They process, I think nationwide, 4.5 million claims a day. So there's a lot of data entry, and so there can be obviously an error in that. So first call your provider. Don't assume it's fraud or abuse to start with. And if you aren't satisfied or don't understand after that, gather some information, look again at your information, and contact your local senior medical patrol. There'll be a phone number at the back, but it's 1-800-423-2449. There'll be a slide right there. So call that number if you suspect that something is wrong after you've talked to your provider, your doctor, or the hospital, or billing. So that's the three steps, and you're trying to prevent it, and then if you don't do that and something happens, and then you try to detect what's wrong and then report what you feel is wrong. If you aren't satisfied, it doesn't make sense. So three steps: protect, detect, and report. And when we go out and do the presentations, we give you some various documents, brochures, and I think there'll be 2 or 3 on the screen here, some information about protecting and your target. Now I know it seems to me that the telemarketers are either they're very sweet and nice. I know there was a senior at one of the nursing homes recently got a $9 fleece blanket. The person called and said, you know, you're a loyal member, you're in our insurance program, we'd like to send you a gift annually. And so they sent her a blanket, and she was showing some guests that and said, wow, that's really nice, they sent me this. And then they found out, they look at your statement, that they charge Medicare $900 for a thermo. I'm not sure the whole term, but some people do need some warmth in their legs. So they charged Medicare $900 for 900 blankets. So that's, you multiply that, as you said, by thousands, you're talking about, that's how you get to the scams, or people charge for ambulance calls they weren't given, or all kinds of things that are out there. And Somebody said, I think when I first read that Medicare, a senior senator said, was like a ATM for thieves. Just put it in and withdraw cash. So it's a serious problem, as you said, up to $60 billion. That's a 6 with 12 zeros after. That's a lot of money that goes out every year. And
well, we showed on the video that we showed very early in the program about the phone call that was received at my home. There have been 4,552 people who have fallen for that particular scam. And the OIG just reported last week that $23 billion have been lost to that particular scam. Now you think about it, 4,000 people, 23 billion, that's a lot of money, and they aren't gonna stop until we stop them. And we're the only people that can, is the people that receive those calls, get that knock on their door. So it's really important that you do the things that John just said. If any of you out there want a presentation, please contact us. John or other volunteers in our community will be happy to come out and teach your groups exactly. Contact us at the number 423-2449. If you want to become a volunteer and help spread the word, we'd love to have you on our team. It's a great, rewarding way to know that you've helped people in our community save their dollars and have those dollars be spent on health care, not lining the pockets of criminals.
Anything final you'd like to say? I'd like to thank you you've been doing this for about 20 plus years, and it's not getting any easier, and the crooks
Actually, it's getting worse.
It's getting worse because there's more creative people, and there's a big target. They spend about $600 billion a year in Medicare, and so they estimate that 10%, $60 billion, is being lost for those various factors: theft, abuse, or just errors. And there's going to be some of that. You can't eliminate all the errors, and you can't eliminate every type, but if you could...
Exactly, but if we can just curb it and cut it back, we'll save billions of dollars that will be spent wisely.
Right. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining us on this
very much.
program of Occurrence Up Close. We're going to end with a couple of short videos, I believe.
We're excited to be making plans to go on our first vacation since retiring. I love going to the mailbox to see if there are any more travel brochures or letters from friends and family, but mostly it's mail from our doctor, the hospital, and Medicare. We know it's important to read our Medicare summary notices, but we don't understand how to make sure everything is correct. It takes so much time to read through all the bills and notices to figure out what's right. They begin to pile up. We began to wonder if we would ever do anything fun again. Then I was telling my friend about our problem. She told me that she heard the Iowa Senior Medicare Patrol speak, and they'll teach you how to read your Medicare summary notice. My husband called 1-800-423-2449 right away to learn more about the Iowa SMP. We went to one of their programs and learned that not checking your Medicare summary notice can result in extra medical costs and possibly medical identity theft. And they told us about the latest scams to be on the watch out for.
You know what? We should join the Iowa Senior Medicare Patrol team and volunteer to help educate our community about the dangers of not checking our Medicare summary notice. Errors or intentionally inappropriate billing, whatever it is, it needs to stop.
Great idea, honey. But now that we learned how to read our Medicare summary notices, we have time to go on vacation first. I'm so excited to help our friends and neighbors learn how to help protect the integrity of the Medicare program, and we still have time to travel. The Iowa Senior Medicare Patrol conducts outreach, makes presentation, and provides counseling to Medicare beneficiaries, their families, caregivers, and service providers. Contact us today to learn more. You might be a target, but you don't have to be a victim.